one of the most surprising animated series in the last few years. What seemed to be just another in a long conveyor belt of cookie-cutter children's programming ended up taking both young parents and emotionally damaged millennials by storm. Bluey is one of the most surprisingly resonant, emotionally warm, and just all-around pleasant animated series to ever grace my TV screen. Despite being less than 10 minutes an episode, every story Bluey tells is masterfully written and expertly paced. They say a lot about parenting, growing up, and life in general that hits home for both the target demographic and their parents watching alongside them. There has never been a kids show that has so definitively punched above its weight class before like Bluey. It delivers stories in 8 minutes that can make even the most cynical tear up from its earnest emotions. And the moments where it takes the kid gloves off and delivers a point aimed squarely at the parents watching never miss. Whether it's about anxiety, getting older, dealing with the loss of a loved one, or a joke that is just enough over the heads of your 7-year-old, the show remains engaging for all ages, and it's all the better for it. Too bad none of that was carried over into the Bluey video game. I suppose expecting a budget-price video game to be the interactive equivalent to what is, in all honesty, a unicorn of a television show may have been expecting a bit too much. The Bluey game is developed by British studio Outright Games, which has an extensive portfolio of children's games based on popular licenses, which all seem to sit in that uncomfortable mid-area that reminds me a bit too much of the state of licensed games in the mid-2000s. Hard to imagine anything great coming out of what seems barely above a children's entertainment content mill. But then again, is it expecting too much? An unexpected well of quality is what everyone loves about Bluey in the first place. It's why you're watching this video right now. Is it really too much to expect a similarly pleasant surprise from its video game adaptation? In this market? Yeah. The general premise of the Bluey video game is that it's currently vacation, with Bluey and Bingo being on break from school. When he was a kid on vacation, Bluey's dad, Bandit, along with his 2 brothers, buried a hidden treasure. Before hiding it forever, though, they made a treasure map leading back to it, in case they ever wanted to find the treasure again. Each brother has a piece of the map. When Bluey and Bingo find Bandit's piece of the old map while playing, the entire family goes on a quest to find the other pieces to reveal and reclaim Bandit's hidden treasure. Hardly out of place for a premise of a Bluey episode. Although this isn't an episode of Bluey, but an entire game. So instead of taking up just a handful of minutes, the premise has to keep your attention for the length of an entire game. Lucky for the game, and unlucky for us, the total time to complete the game is about an hour. A little over 2 if you want to complete everything. Now, I have never been one to demand a specific length for a retail price video game. I will take quality over quantity any day. Sure, 2 hours is a pretty paltry experience for $40. But an episode of Bluey is only like 7 minutes, and is still some of the best TV out there. Give me 2 hours of banger gameplay, and I will not complain. Yeah, you all know where this is going, don't you? There's really no getting around it. The Bluey video game just isn't all that good. While the trailer makes it seem like the game visually is just like an episode of the TV show, the actual game is a fair bit less polished. Now don't get me wrong, I really appreciate going against common convention and sticking to 2D puppets for the graphics, at least for the characters. Bluey is definitely an art style that would be very tricky to represent in 3D. All you gotta do is look at the majority of the designs of the Bluey toys for evidence of that. Combining 2D puppets that can still live in 3D space and move through 3D environments was the optimal way of handling visuals in this game. I'm not faulting that. It's just, the devil's in the details, you know? Presentation in the game is a mixed bag. The sprites for Bluey, her family, and the other characters are crisp on average, and look like they're ripped straight from the TV show. Certain elements, though, like Bandit's muzzle, are puzzingly lower resolution than everything else, and become really distracting in close-up shots. Other elements are also lower quality than their surrounding materials, leading to an inconsistent aesthetic that's less than the sum of its parts. As mentioned earlier, objects and environments are all in 3D and contrast well with the flat characters. In the TV show, Bluey's environments use a slightly different shading and outline method than the animated puppets, so having these elements be 3D gives the game a similar sense of contrast as well. It works great. Since the levels are all 3D, it's fun to be able to fully explore accurately recreated locations from the Bluey TV show and see them in a more continuous fashion and see how they all fit together, even if certain layouts have been slightly adjusted to work better as game level. But sometimes the 2D and the 3D clash. Having 3D accessories like hats trying to sit on top of the 2D character puppets can sometimes lead to some clashing visual aesthetics. Certain elements can clip through each other or just not interact at all. Some hats will just float unmoving, even as the character puppet underneath flips and changes direction mid-run or the like. It's little things like this that are frequent enough to portray what looks nice in screenshots and trailers to be a much more budget, slapdash affair under closer inspection. Also, the vocal performances are a bit all over the place. The voice actors for Bandit and Chili both reprise their roles here for the game. Now, their voices are pretty good, but lack the enthusiasm from the show. I guess I can tell they aren't working with much of a script. Bingo and Bluey, though, I'm assuming because they're voiced by kids, aren't voicing the characters in the game. Well, at least I don't think so. It's tricky to know for sure. Even in the TV show, the credits don't list any of the child voice actors' names, for privacy reasons. Which, by the way, I respect that. We don't know who voices Bluey or Bingo. Just the same, no one is listed as their VAs in the credits of the game either. So I can't know for sure if they're voiced by the same actors or different child actors who are being kept anonymous for the same reasons. Articles written when the game was announced seemed to imply that the voice cast would reprise their roles for the game, but the article I found only specifically called out Bandit and Chili, so I think everyone is here? Maybe? Who can say? Regardless, just by playing through the game, it sounded like they were using clips of the actual voice cast for iconic lines and catchphrases, while subbing in sound-alikes for any dialogue that had to be recorded uniquely for the game's plot. Those lines in particular were a lot less convincing, which led myself and a Bluey fan I was playing the game with to conclude that they weren't the original voice actors. But again, I can't know that for sure. It could just be the fact that the voice actors are getting older and their voices are changing, or that the direction for the dialogue in the game was less clear than the direction the actors all get for recording the show. Whatever the reason, it still sounded very different from even the latest seasons of the show. There were a lot of rough pieces of dialogue, made even more jarring by a handful of audio bugs cutting out or desyncing certain voice clips and sound effects throughout the game. Other times, certain sounds just weren't mixed all that well and felt out of place. When playing the Keepy Uppy minigame, Bluey's "Oh no" is particularly jarring, channeling some hardcore Sonic Adventure 1 Knuckles energy. Also, Bingo's giggle that plays when accomplishing tasks is also low-key cursed.
Oh no! A lion on the loose! Quick, let's catch it!
Now, should I be criticizing the performances of child actors? Yes. Do I feel deeply bad about doing it anyways? Yes. Will I cut this out of the script because of that? Probably not. I mean, the game is a bit of a bug-riddled mess in general. Presentation polish is the least of its issues. Quite a few times things will just break entirely. One time during the Keepy Uppy minigame, the balloon got stuck to Bluey right at the beginning, breaking the entire game. You can't even end the game. So the only way to break out of the bug is to restart the game or wait for the timer to run out. Other simpler issues like inaccurate collisions and hitboxes making for finicky jumping or clicking on things are all over the maps of this game. It makes even the simplest of interactions more annoying than they need to be. The game also allows up to 4 players at once, letting you play as the entire healer family and go through the whole campaign together. It's pretty clear that this was the expected mode of play though, as when the healers have to be controlled by the AI instead of someone in the room with you, things can fall apart fast. I guess the healers are pretty light on smarts. Having them do even simple things like move through the environment and follow the player, and they'll get caught in a corner or lose pathing. The bulk of the game is for playing a series of minigames pulled from the show, like Keepy Uppy with the other healers. And when controlled by the computer, there really isn't much of a game at all to play. The AI characters will often just stand around and do nothing or glitch out, letting you utterly dominate the game. While sometimes in other games like Chatterbox Chase, the AI is super aggressive to the point of chaos, where the premise of the minigame itself almost stops working as intended with the constant freezing. It just feels more built for multiplayer, without much consideration for the solo experience. Now, the gaps here probably won't be noticed by the target demographic if they're playing with less than 4 players. But again, should we be okay with that in a Bluey game? Also, and this really has nothing to do with anything, but considering the context of the game and the demographic it's for, there are some not safe for children activities and environments in this game. In the park area, there is a slide that goes directly into a fence. In the healer house, you can jump down from over the 2nd-story staircase down to the main floor. And outside, you can jump over the wall of the trampoline back onto the lawn. Chili and Bandit need to keep a closer eye on these kids. What is this, Rugrats? But probably the biggest issue with the game as a game, though, is that it's somehow criminally short, while at the same time shockingly padded for runtime. The game is structured like a collectathon, with each area having a handful of trinkets to collect, as well as certain location-specific tasks to accomplish. To collect stickers for the photo book, Bluey has to document her vacation. Rather than something like a platformer, where you can quickly zip around collecting dozens of things in quick sequence, Bluey's collectibles are a lot more monotonous. A lot of these items are locked behind boring and repetitive tasks, such as water X amounts of plants, which involves continually filling up a watering can, walking over to a plant, watering it twice before the can is empty, walking back to the faucet, filling the can up again, and repeating dozens of times. When you finally do collect the item, it's marked with an overly long, unskippable fanfare. Now, it's only a second or two, but it definitely hurts the momentum of the game to keep getting paused longer than you like and sit through a generic particle effect and free stock sound effect to celebrate you finding yet another hockey stick. A lot of the minigames in Bluey are based on the imagination games the girls pull their parents into from the show. Imagination is kind of a core thing in this game as well, since the rules of the activities and minigames you end up playing aren't in any real way enforced by the game itself. There rarely are fail states in the game's challenges. There's no way, at least that I found, to get a game over, which again, you kind of expect for a game like this, but would still hope that a brand like Bluey would be better than that. Like the reality of the world of Bluey itself, the game's rules are only enforced by the imagination of the people playing it, which is really my biggest beef with the Bluey game as a package. It's pretty much a distraction for children and nothing else. If you bought this game to keep your kid who loves the Bluey show distracted for an hour or two while you had something important to do, it will serve that purpose no problem, warts and all. The visuals are really accurate to the show, even with the bugs and at times lackluster polish. And the gameplay is simple enough that kids can largely navigate the game without guidance. And its lack of enforcement of fail states means even the most uncoordinated kids can just power through the game at their own pace. The problem, though, is that this lowest common denominator kind of approach to the game is the antithesis of Bluey as a TV show and as an IP, and kind of spits in the face of what everyone loves about Bluey in the first place. There is nothing about this game that parents playing alongside their kids, or even older children, or us emotionally maladapted millennials, the real important demographic here, people that would have even the slightest sort of taste when it comes to games, would stick around for. In an age where free-to-play and phone games exist to much more effectively entertain your kids in lieu of actual parenting, coughing up $40 for something that is a categorically less engaging product seems like an almost insulting ask. The soul of Bluey, that delicate balance of storytelling that appeals to everyone, the heartfelt character moments, the shocking level of quality, the obvious presence of people that genuinely care about what they're creating is entirely missing in this video game. Even the Bluey superfan I was playing with was getting pretty burnt out by the end of it, while trying to 100% the game, continuing out of a stubborn determination over anything else. It only takes a few hours to do, but the repetition of everything really starts to grate on you. Especially with long, unskippable fanfare with every pickup, and repetitive plant growing that make up the majority of the monotony. The final tree to grow, to get what will probably be the last sticker you collect, requires backtracking entirely through the creek, the only environment that has any real substantial size to it. To refill your watering can multiple times for no reason other than artificially increasing the length of the final leg of the game. It is the final irritating cherry on the monotonous sundae for real life. The best thing I can say about Bluey the video game is that, unlike the other Bluey games for phones, it's not stuffed to the gills with microtransactions. So in that regard, it's an incompetent product, but hey, at least it's not outright evil. In light of all that, it's pretty much impossible to recommend the Bluey game to anyone but the most diehard of fans. If your room is packed wall to wall with a concerning amount of Bluey memorabilia, despite having no children, I'm sure this game will slot well into your concerning collection. For everyone else, just throw on your favorite episode again. It is 10 times more enjoyable and 10 times shorter to get through. If you need a distraction for your kid that'll last a while, there are plenty of other games, TV shows, and movies that will fill the role better, and more affordably too. Or, you could take a hint from Bluey proper and, take your kid outside or something. I don't know. I don't have kids. I'm the maladapted, perpetual man-child millennial, remember? Who else is going to spend their time legitimately reviewing a children's product? Someone has to do it. No, Bluey. Don't review my game. No.